Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast where we wrap up the Redskins' 32-27 loss to the Eagles. I spent a few minutes with receiver Terry McLaurin and safety Montae Nicholson after the game for some of their thoughts. Then Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times Dispatch joined me, and then it's my time for some observations of the game. But first, here's what Terry McLaurin and Montae Nicholson had to say. I'm going to start with McLaurin, who had a terrific game with 5 catches for 125 yards. McLaurin has the speed they craved at receiver, and the design did a good job of getting him free down the middle. By the way, nobody should wonder anymore why they cut Josh Doctson, who, incidentally, never had any games here with more than 100 yards receiving. Now, here's Terry McLaurin. Start off with the positive for you, the touchdown. What was that like for you? And just describe the play?
Yeah, it was a lot of hard work. I'm blessed to play this game at the highest level. Guys really blessed me, and just to be in a situation where a team, believes in me like the Redskins do, and they've told me a lot of times that they're going to lean on me a lot this season. They want me to come in and make big plays, but it's not too much pressure, and I don't feel like the moment's too big for me. And teammates and my coaches do a really good job of giving me confidence. And on that play, Coach O'Connell came over before the prior series and was like, "We're coming to take a shot." Okay. And we knew the DBs were sitting, and you got to make them pay when they're sitting, and you have fast receivers. So Case did a great job of throwing me open. I got a good release. And he threw me to the open field, and I just want to use my speed to finish the play.
It looked like, because you said they're sitting, because you guys are sending some crossers, and it looks like they're coming up hard on those crossers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. They play off one high coverage, and they started mixing up when we kind of started to get behind them a little bit. But at the same time, they were, basically trying to sit and dare us to throw and run by them, and we were able to do that a couple of times. But it's just a tale of two halves. And
it was like that second one was kind of the tail, where the second one you get open, and sometimes it's an overthrow, and that's simple as that.
And that happens sometimes. Football's a game of inches, and but not only do I have confidence in myself, I have confidence in Case. He makes this game really easy for me, and I know we're going to get back to the drawing board starting tomorrow and try to hit all our shots.
So what did you take away from this one? Because there were some young guys like yourself go out there and make plays, and you have, this first half was almost flawless, and then the second half, like the way it did. What do you take away from this one?
I guess you take away that, we started off fast, offense, defense, special teams. We connected a lot, we converted. But that's why you play 60 minutes of football. Credit to the Eagles. They executed in the second half, and they basically won the possession game as well. So us going forward, we just have to execute, limit the third and longs and the penalties, and I feel like we could be better.
All right, thanks, Terry.
No problem.
Okay, now let's turn to safety Montae Nicholson. I asked him about some of the big plays allowed by the defense and why they happened. And yeah, there was more of that miscommunication. Why does that happen? And he had some good answers for it, and I think you'll see. I also think this is something that absolutely needs to get cleaned up. It was a problem in the past, and it's one that needs to get resolved soon. I will say good offenses know how to put stress on coverages with last-minute shifts or formations. The problem that I have with the second Desean Jackson touchdown, there weren't any last-minute shifts. Someone just blew a coverage, and that's what's unacceptable. Anyway, here's Nicholson. Two halves. First half, you guys come out looking great. Second half, they hit you guys a few times. What do you feel changed there?
I guess just kind of maybe fatigue, so to speak, and just lack of communication, really. I've been saying communication is big, but it's to our defense. This is our first game that we've all played to its entirety together. You know what I mean? So it's easy to play preseason the first half or the first quarter. It's a little bit more difficult, coming out second half, and just making sure everybody's on the same page and mentally and physically, like I said, it's not anything that can't be fixed.
When you talk about the miscommunication, just some of those deep balls, is just guys rotating or not dropping to where they're supposed to be? Is that, not being on the same page with the assignment, or is that what you mean? Or
yeah, all of that. From not getting the call around, from just busting coverage to just whatever you can think of. But it's just, like I said, it's not anything that can be fixed. Not anything that won't be fixed. It'll all be put back together.
What do you take from that first half?
That's just a picture of what we can be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know it, and it's great and everything, but it doesn't really matter because the way the game ended and how the second half looked. You know what I mean? We got, like I said, we got a glimpse, but we're not really satisfied with just that glimpse. We want to make that the entire scene.
And those Desean touchdowns, when you get a guy with you guys obviously know his speed and what he can do, and you get that for even that first one, that second one, those are, how much of a backbreaker are those? Because you guys are, especially that first one, you're in position to kind of shut him down, and then he hits you like that. How much of a backbreaker is that?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It may seem like that just because of how the rest of the game went, but like I said, we just got to just make sure we rally around each other and make sure we finish the game. That's just basically what it comes down to, just staying together and keeping that game endurance up. Because it's not like practice, it's not like the preseason. So we just want to make sure that we're good in that aspect. And we got 15 regular ones left, playing for that 17. So we got to make the rest of them count.
Last one with the communication, what do you guys go back to? How do you go back and correct that? Now, what's the next step for that?
When teams just get to going fast and tempo like that, we got to make sure it's quick instead of just kind of, okay, it's this, okay, no, it's this, blah blah blah. Just we got to make it simple for ourselves and just so we can get out there and play ball.
Out there. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. After this break, I'll be back with Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times Dispatch. We'll discuss the Adrian Peterson situation and a lot more from this game. Welcome back. Now here's Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times Dispatch and myself talking about the game. Problem is with this first game, I'm starting with somebody that didn't even play the game. Adrian Peterson, first of all, were you surprised by that decision?
I think it had clearly been foreshadowed all week. Still, he's a Hall of Famer. He's on the team. He got the contract. You would have expected him to not be on the team if he wasn't going to play on Sundays. But Jay Gruden's post-game comments, I thought, made it very clear he doesn't see a role for Adrian Peterson on this year's team. Which
is shocking because the quote he had, I think, is, yes, if we want to run the ball 55 times, line up in I formation, then I will get him in the game. That's a guy who's basically saying it's going to be this way for the rest of the way, unless something happens with injuries.
I'm going to play a different style.
Right.
I'm going to play a different style of football, one that does not involve power running and wearing the opponents down. And maybe if Geis gets hurt, it's nice to have him ready to be called up from inactives, but he's not a guy with a role in this offense that they're wanting to play. And tip your hat to Jay. The offense, for the most part, the plays were well designed. They should have had a lot more than they had.
Absolutely.
It was a good style of football for what they needed to do.
It is. It's funny, though, because it's hard to fathom that Adrian Peterson is inactive. Even if you think in some ways I don't want to say makes sense, but the reasoning for him was special teams and wanting to defend Darren Sproles in the punt return game, et cetera, et cetera.
And I understand where Jay is coming from in a vacuum. In a vacuum, right. If you want to make that decision, like we're not going to use Adrian Peterson, so this guy might be able to help me out on a punt unit or something. But in real life here, that was a distraction you didn't need to create on game day of week 1.
Well, a lot of the talk in the locker room after the game was about Peterson.
You just didn't need it. It wasn't necessary. Find me the 46th guy, the guy who made the cut instead of Adrian Peterson. I bet you could have done just as well today without him.
And I think especially defensively. So now let's turn to the game, because I don't want to keep talking about a decision and a guy that did not play in this game, because I can talk about that in a little bit when I give you some of my wrap up. But what the hell happened? It was 17-0, 20-7.
And if you had told me before the game, Redskins put up all these points, only lose by 5, I would have thought everybody probably leaves here with their head held high, feels all right about that. Nobody left here with their head held.
Nor should they.
Nor should they have. Offensively, so much more of the same. The holding penalties, 6 penalties by the offensive line the second half. Drives never got a chance to start. Defensively, what was the thing we talked about all during training camp? Oh, we're going to be better at communicating this year. We're not going to have miscommunications. 2 miscommunications, 2 Desean Jackson touchdowns. Holy cow.
I know, and I think, that's funny because like what we saw with Desean in Washington, how he can change the game with one play. And I kind of thought that first touchdown may have been the big play because they had stopped him to that point. It gave the Eagles life, and I think there was only one drive after that where they didn't score. And that's just how it goes with that guy.
But on the other side, Terry McLaurin, he's going to be a similar player. And you point out, like, I guess there's no way to say this other than bluntly. The Eagles players are better than the Redskins players. And you saw that when Case Keenum couldn't hit Terry McLaurin for that long pass, and twice the Eagles converted. That's 2 long passes for touchdowns against 1. It was a 1-touchdown game in the end.
Well, and also you watched Carson Wentz, his ability to, as the game went on, and this team was getting, I'm sure there's a fatigue thing that sets in for that front. You're only rushing 4 guys most of the time. But if you're having to prolong, you're rushing a lot, and now you're chasing the guy when he's rolling out, he was able to capitalize on that big time.
You pointed this out in the press box. The best thing the Eagles did in the second half, got the Redskins into that nickel coverage.
Yeah.
Just they didn't have the guys down on the defensive line to rush to put pressure on. But I don't want to take away from Wentz because holy cow,
he was terrific.
He's fun to watch.
He is, and I think we saw that. It's funny because he wants to be more effective from the pocket, but his game is about improvising, and not just. But again, he's getting outside the pocket to make plays. And he hurt the Redskins with those big plays in those situations. I am surprised with the run game too. Were you?
Yeah, the Redskins' inability to start the run game. Yeah, I don't know how much of that stems back to the offensive line. Obviously, we've got a lot to break down coming out of this. But the fact that Darius Geis couldn't get going, I thought he was going to be a lot more effective catching passes rolling out of the backfield than he was. I think it was 3 catches, 3 yards was the final tally on that. Clearly, this is not going to be a rushing identity team, as evidenced by Adrian Peterson comments, as evidenced by the things they're doing. But you're still going to need a little bit more in that, particularly when that defense needed a blow in the third quarter and you couldn't give it to them.
They couldn't give it to them, but the defense didn't help itself either. No. And I think that's the problem that I had with the defense is that that's supposed to be the bedrock of this team, and I felt like they failed in the end because if you look at this, you say, all right, that last touchdown. It was, I don't want to say they gave it to him, but it was a 2-minute drive.
Of course.
They're playing and, just off and all that. But even still, like if you get 27 points, let's say they get 20, or, because that's really what we're looking at here. That, with the way they want to play this game, that could be enough in other games if the defense plays better.
This team should be able to win 20-17 or 20-14.
They're going to have to, I think.
Well, they're definitely going to have to. Their lack of creating a takeaway, I think was big, and that's such a thing where like that'll come week to week. You might have a week where you get 4. You might have a week where you get 0. Today was the day where you got 0, though, and even just one of them tilts the field and maybe even changes the whole game.
Case Keenum, what'd you think?
I thought the stats are probably a little misleading. The stats were good.
Stats were great, yeah.
I thought Case was fine. He was very good early. I thought as the game went on, he lost his accuracy on that last drive. I'm thinking of a sequence. He had 3rd and 4th down passes to McLaurin. I keep mispronouncing his name. He was off on both of them. McLaurin came back and got the 4th down pass. But I thought both of those showed just he's a little bit off. I don't know if that's something that will evolve or if that's just who he is. You can probably build a team around that and be fine, but that's a team that's going to need to have some other really good parts.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to sit there and rely on Case Keenum's arm to win you the game because I think it's putting him in a spot that he really isn't capable of succeeding in, I don't think. So that's why I think I go back to that run game and the importance of that. If you don't get that going, then Jay Gruden would say, and he told us this, winning 17-13 would be great for him. And he has said he wants to be a team that can run the ball very effectively, and they just haven't done it. And that's, I think, like if you don't get that fixed, there could be some problems.
I'm curious what you think. I'll go back to our original point here. I don't think if Adrian Peterson is active today and gets those carries, things turn out any different.
Oh, I don't think they're any different either. And I think there was, there are some other issues that were going on there. But no, I don't think that I don't think if Adrian Peterson plays that this game is really any different, because we saw this a lot last year too when he was playing, and then we also saw games where he did very, very well. But I don't know that it would have changed a whole lot, and that isn't a reflection of Geis or anything like that. It's just there wasn't a whole lot there.
No, and on the offensive line, Penn has 2 penalties, Flowers has 2 penalties. Okay, you can probably take that because they didn't allow any major sacks, I would say. But Moses having the 2 penalties and then some comments after the game of, I guess the refs are out to get me, that's not going to sit well.
No, it's not going to sit well, but he has
bad way to start the year.
It is a bad way to start the year, especially for a guy who was heavily penalized last year. He's got to be better, and I think that's a must. So going forward, what do you take from this moving forward for this team?
It's a fixable problem, but I don't know if they'll fix it or be able to. You clean up that defensive communication, it does still have the potential to be a very good unit. I just fear that you think about last season, they're starting at about week 5 of last season as opposed to week 1.
Right.
We're not even getting those few great weeks. They can beat the Cowboys. Look, I get the Cowboys are a good team, but they can beat the Cowboys at home. The play calling was very good today offensively. I thought there were a lot of well-designed plays. It was a well-called game by Gruden, O'Connell, whoever else was involved in that. The defense has got to clean up, and they got to do it quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that, Michael. Hey, appreciate you joining me. We got 15 more of these to go. Yeah, now, we probably shouldn't laugh because you don't know, but it is like you see a game like this as like you go from holy hell to holy crap in a hurry.
More than 15 potentially, though, if they clean it up. So there you go.
There you go. We'll end on that one, folks. After this break, I'll be back with my observations and where does the Peterson situation go from here. Okay, now it's time for my observations. I know Michael and I talked about Peterson being inactive, but I want to take you inside the locker room for the reactions and how it was handled and what might be the fallout. I do think players were upset about this decision. To what degree, that's hard to say. I know some guys, it's the respect they have for Peterson, what he's meant to the game and to their locker room. I think you saw that before the game when NBC Sports Washington showed a little video clip of him kind of in the middle of the running backs group, leading them for whatever, whether it's cheers or just pumping them up, whatever. They notice that stuff. And he's a humble guy who works hard and produced for them last year. He's been a big help to the running back, so it's natural that they'd have some sort of feelings for a decision like this. As Morgan Moses said, Peterson has a lot of juice left. I don't know about a lot, but he can still help. And I knew there was a chance of this happening once they signed Wendell Smallwood, or claimed him, I should say. The Redskins just don't keep 4 running backs active and haven't under Gruden, and Smallwood plays special teams. It's the exact same situation they had with Samaje Perine last year. I'm not comparing Peterson to Perine. I'm just saying that that's why I felt like early in the week that there was a chance of this happening, because it's what they've done in the past when you have a guy who's a third running back. It's not about the name Peterson, it's about the role. He is a third running back, and that's what Perine was last year. That's why you could see this happening this way. Whether or not you agree with it, I'm just telling you why I felt like there was a chance of this happening. And Chris Thompson said it too, that it would be hard to get all 3 running backs touches, especially the way that game unfolded. But he also said that they know the fear that Peterson still puts in defenses when he's out there on the field. So, it'll be interesting to watch. Now, that's my first observation. Number 2, Peterson handled this well. Contrast that with how Antonio Brown handled his situation in Oakland. It's far different. Peterson spoke to the media after the game, a rarity for someone who was inactive. He was very calm, he was honest, but he didn't rip anybody. He didn't rip the decision. He said, of course he wants to. This isn't a role he wants. Of course he wants to be on the field. Who wouldn't want to be? It's why he's still playing after 13 years, or why he keeps himself in a certain shape, etc. And it spoke to his professionalism. Where does it go from here? I don't know. I was told after the game that not even Peterson knew what direction or what his next step would be, whether to hang in there, ask for a release, ask for a trade. Those are his options. Now, I talked to a few agents who rep other players who said they knew exactly what they would do. They would ask for his release. And that is definitely something that could happen here and perhaps soon. It will take some talking, I think, with Jay Gruden from Peterson or from his reps or whomever to determine the best course of action. Get a feel for what Gruden sees as his role going forward, and if that's going to be the case, then I think you could see that there's a natural conclusion to this situation. The guy doesn't want to waste his remaining career being inactive, especially for, I don't care for any team. For any team, you wouldn't want to be inactive. The guy wants to go out there and play, and you can't blame him. And so whether or not you like the decision, this is where it's at. Number 3, that was a ballsy decision by Jay Gruden, and it'll be interesting to see how the guys process this moving forward. Players haven't quit on Gruden in the past, and I wouldn't think they do so now. But I do think it's something that has their antenna up. And it's clear they didn't like seeing Peterson inactive. I don't think Gruden helped himself by pouring some gasoline on the fire with his comments about running the ball 55 times out of I formation, and that's how they could get him in the game. It sounded like a coach who didn't want a distraction like this. I know there were some reports out there that he wanted him cut and that the front office said no. I was also told the opposite, that wasn't the case. So, I don't know what really happened there. I just know that I heard one thing and I was told another thing by somebody else involved. So we'll see. But this is, and regardless, it's not a move the front office would have endorsed. I don't think so. But you can also see that a guy like Gruden wouldn't want these kind of conversations. I think that's what led to the comment that he made that you just want to talk about football, not about who was inactive for half your press conference or at least a couple questions. But I do think he has to be careful here. Peterson is a respected member of this team. Players hear and see what is said. And I also thought it was interesting during the welcome home luncheon, for example, a story that Peterson told after accepting his award as the Offensive Player of the Year. He talked about how when he came here to work out, he felt like he had a really good workout. And I had heard from other people in the organization at the time how good he looked during the workout compared to other players. And that maybe some people in the organization wanted to go in a different direction instead of with him. He went up to Jay Gruden's office afterwards, and he said that Gruden kept telling, in this story, Peterson said that Gruden kept telling him, yeah, maybe in a couple weeks we'll give you a call if we still need something, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they signed him later that day. And the reason I'm even recounting this story is because when Peterson was talking about it, you kept waiting for him to say something along the lines of, but then Gruden said, I was just kidding. We're going to sign you today, because they did sign him that day. But there was never really any conclusion to that story. It was almost like it was brought up because he felt like maybe Gruden didn't clearly believe in him from the start. I don't know. Or he's just saying it to say that, yeah, even some people here, and then I went out and proved this, and this is why this award meant something to me. I don't know, because the conclusion of that story never really finalized that, but I just thought it was interesting, so I wanted to relay that to you. All right, on to number 3. As Michael and I talked earlier, the issue with the run game wasn't the fact that Peterson didn't play. I know there are some who, I'm going to back up for a second here. I will also say with these decisions with Gruden, this is what a head coach has to do, is make these kind of decisions, and you don't make them based on whether or not you think players will be happy or not. You based on what you think is the best move for your team. And if you don't think Peterson's going to get the ball in the game and impact the game from scrimmage, then you need a guy who can maybe help you on special teams, whether it's Smallwood or another linebacker, whomever. I think that's how you have to run your team. Whether or not it works out, this is why you're paid $5 million a year to make these kind of decisions, and it's his job that's on the line. Not anybody else's here. So I think you have to keep some of that stuff in mind. I'm not excusing or not saying this is the greatest move, but I am saying that this is, you don't make a decision just based on how these guys are going to go. I do think you need to treat guys. I think there's some things with a guy like Peterson that how that's going to come across if he's inactive and what the storyline's going to be. So you have to be really careful there. And I do think that if you think it's going to go this way and it's going to become an issue, I think you almost have to say, you know what, let's rip that Band-Aid off and let's part ways. And, whether or not that would go over well in the locker room, I don't think it would. But again, you have to make those decisions as a coach. And I think that's, something that will be interesting to watch. But I think if it's going to be like this, and you don't want these distractions, then rip that Band-Aid off and move on. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, about the run game. I know there were some who grumble about the run game design outside the organization by Bill Callahan. I would also say a lot of the issues stem from the Eagles stacking the line a decent amount. It looked like that's on first glance. It also came because some of the backside blocking wasn't that great. When they'd run to the left, for example, the guys who made the plays were coming from the backside. That includes that right side, which of Sheriff and Moses, which has to be better. Again, I don't know how they were overall for the game. I've got to go back and watch it, but that was my initial thought. I was disappointed in that pairing a couple times, especially on some stunts and that, where Moses got allowed some pressure. Moses had a couple penalties. That has to stop. He has too many of them. I know Donald Penn and Eric Flowers both had a couple penalties. I think given the expectations for them, they probably did what you thought they would, maybe even a little bit better at times. So, I also think in the run game, Geis is going to need some time to continue shaking off that rust, and that goes back to Peterson. Maybe he could have helped taking some of that load off, but they didn't lose because Peterson didn't run the ball. With the receivers being better run blockers, heck, Trey Quinn was blocking down in the ends occasionally and with some success. I thought he'd get free for a few chunk gains. But in talking to Geis after the Atlanta preseason game, it was clear that he knew he needed more work. He was still getting used to making the right cuts, the right reads, and getting that feel back. And that's what he needs to make those explosive cuts. It's not about a healthy knee. It's about trusting it, but then also getting your rhythm back. And that, you figured that was going to take a little bit of time. But again, that's why people thought that maybe you use AP early in the year, especially to help not so much ease him back in physically, but just before allow him to get a rhythm. But you're not going to get a rhythm unless you're out there carrying the ball. So we'll see about that, his success going forward. Number 4, one thing I liked, the play design to get the receivers open. The Redskins scored 27 points, and yes, that includes 7 when the Eagles essentially allowed them to drive down the field with underneath passes. But those designs were effective when combined with good protection, and they did get some good protection. Sometimes they slowed the ends with play action, with the jet action as well, with some other motion, and that was with some success. I thought the Eagles would challenge them more on the left side with some stunts. They did not. And I thought there were sometimes early in the game where they'd have Cox slant rush by slanting to the center. That allowed Flowers to then help Donald Penn outside, and that helped as well. So, that was good. That protection allowed Case Keenum to have some success in the first half. I think the Redskins did a good job all summer of creating openings in the middle of the field for their passing game. Lots of crossers designed to widen the linebackers or to divert the safety's attention, and you saw that against the Eagles. They work, and they'll continue to work, and that's why they're okay with going with the young receivers, especially you look at McLaurin. We talked to him earlier, but that's what this guy was here for, and he may end up to be a better receiver here than he was in college. That's a credit to the offensive staff, whether it's Jay Gruden or Kevin O'Connell's design. Regardless, I've seen it all summer starting in training camp. Guys get open in this offense, and I think that will continue. Lastly, number 5, the defense needs to be cleaned up. I'm not blaming anything at all on Jonathan Allen not playing for most of the final 3 quarters with a sprained knee. The depth of the D-line is a strength, so no, that's not the reason. It didn't help, but you can't sit there and talk about your D-line depth and then point to one guy in part of that depth and say, well, that's the reason. You can't do that, and I don't think they will. As Montae Nicholson talked, the communication is the key. They brought in Ray Horton to coach the secondary to help the back end and to help marry the back with the front with coordinator Greg Minuski. It wasn't just communication. Quentin Dunbar, for one, needs to be better. I think they all do. I don't think the safeties were really the big problem here at all. I liked how Landon Collins especially played in the run game, but the pass rush wasn't any help. And if you're gonna rush with only 4, they've got to get home. That allows you to play better on the back end. I don't think the great defenses aren't about blitzing. It's about playing very sound. And they didn't do that. There were, again, the miscommunications, or just, it wasn't always miscommunication, because some of that comes off of, as we talked earlier, about the motion, but the one touchdown to Desean Jackson, there was no motion. So it wasn't about that. It's about doing your job. If 10 guys do your job and 1 doesn't, that isn't on the coaches, folks. That's on the player. So it's easy to blame Greg Minuski, and you can pick at him all you want. There's a track record there. I get it. Have at it. Until you have that success, everybody's fair game for criticism here. But I think the defense is so much more more simplistic than on offense, as far as be sound, play your job, make the play in your area. You do that, you can be a good defense, and that's on the players too. So I'm not going to get carried away just saying Minuski sucks and do all that, because I don't think it's that simple. I think you have guys that have to do their job, and I thought the Eagles also did a good job spreading them and running them up the middle at times in their nickel. So anyways, The Redskins didn't do their job in the final 2.5 quarters, and that was the difference, and that must change. Anyway, that's all I have from Philadelphia. Thank you to Terry McLaurin and Montae Nicholson for talking to me after the game. Thank you to Michael Phillips of the Richmond Times Dispatch for joining me as well. And as always, thank you for listening.